South Africans will feel the impact of Eskom's 18% tariff hike. It will effectively cut government's proposed national minimum wage offer in half. And this is according to the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Now, the January 2023 Household Affordability Index paints a grim picture. Necessities like hygiene products are competing with basic food items. And what else is contained in the report? We're now joined by Mervyn Abrahams from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Mervyn, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about this grim picture painted for most South Africans, particularly when we focus on the Household Affordability Index. What do you have with regards to data at your hands?
So good morning, Tumelo, and good morning to all your viewers. Tumelo, our index in terms of data, as well as our conversations and our assessment with local communities, all indicate that we have now gotten to a stage where households can no longer afford price increases. So when we look at our food price basket, then we see the basket has increased by 64 Rand between December and January of this year. And it has increased by about 516 Rand over the past year. And this takes our basket, currently the cost of our basket, to 4,917 Rand. So that's an 11.7% increase on our food basket. So that's one area of concern for consumers. Then when we also, of course, very aware of the potential 18% increase on electricity that will kick in April and in June, depending on where you live and where you source your energy from. And that's going to, of course, households to be able to purchase. And then, of course, we are also seeing a potential petrol price increase and interest rate increase. So consumers are being knocked from every single side, and all these increases are being made in isolation of each other. So NERSA doesn't take into consideration interest rates. It doesn't take into consideration food prices. It only takes into consideration electricity prices. But of course, all these increases are impacting on the same consumer. And that's why the affordability crisis has significantly deepened over the past month and will be over this coming year.
Yeah, and just to also add on what you're saying, Mervyn, I understand that you're also arguing that no wage negotiations should actually even be attempted before we know of Eskom's annual electricity tariff increase. Then, of course, for this increase to be immediately absorbed by a higher wage increment.
Yes. So what we have seen in the past, of course, is that NERSA grants Eskom's, decide on Eskom's increase for a year, generally speaking around January or so, while wage negotiations often start much earlier. So if we look, for instance, at the national minimum wage, and we know that most South Africans earn at that level, the Department of Labour had proposed to the National Minimum Wage Commission, which sets the wages, that the wage be increased by 8%. Now, that was above inflationary increase, which was meant to cushion some of this affordability crisis. Since then, NERSA has granted Eskom an 18% increase. Now, an 18% increase will translate into a 146 Rand increase in the cost of prepaid electricity for a household who uses about 350 kilowatts. So that's most ordinary low-income households. So that 146 Rand will come off the proposed, will mean that households actually, or workers receiving an 8% increase, will actually only be receiving something in the region of a 4.2 real increase. And that's where the danger comes in. And of course, headline inflation is well over 7%. Food prices are going up almost 12%. So we are getting poorer and poorer and poorer each year, even though our wages are being increased.
Yeah. I want to talk about parents for a moment. Mervyn, we know that January usually is a headache for most parents who have their little bundles of joys, going back to school. There's uniform, there's so much to pay in the school front, but they equally have to take care of the households. What are they telling you in terms of what they're going through, especially in the beginning of the year, and what they continue to have to endure, not only in the rest of the year, but also every start of the year in the month of January?
So women tell us, and of course this burden rests squarely on the shoulders of most women, mothers. So there's also gender implications involved in this. They tell us that, of course, January is a horrendous month, and of course we know that. With Christmas, and of course, if there's workers in the household, they would have earned their salary quite early on in December. So the December salary has to stretch way into January. And with extra school uniforms, stationery, and all this to get children to school means that actually they have to cut costs in other areas. So a lot of people tell us they cut costs in terms of electricity, for instance. They cut costs in terms of food, which of course has horrendous implications from a health perspective and from an educational perspective and from an economic productivity perspective. So that is really how households are able to do it. And then on top of that, they still cannot come out. They have to take on debt, which they would have to pay off then for the rest of the year. And so it is we have to find a way of how we can get children to school in a dignified manner without putting this extra financial burden on households. And unfortunately, we do not have the answer, but it's something that is of absolute importance.
We'll leave it there, and I appreciate you speaking to us about this. Mervyn Abrahams from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, thank you for your time.